All right, good morning. Welcome to the City of Detroit Housing and Revitalization Department's Program Compliance Information Meeting for our January 2026 Notice of Funding Availability for Affordable Housing. It is now February, but the NOFA was released in January. We're going to record this today, but please note that the attendance is tracked for this meeting. And so as you're joining, if you can please ensure that your name is shown correctly and your affiliated organization. You can also put that information in the chat if you are unable to rename yourself, but we want to make sure that we have a record of who has attended. All right, we can jump to the next slide, Terry. So through this NOFA, we have a total of $13 million that's available within two categories, $8 million for multifamily development and $5 million specifically for supportive housing. This refers to also known as permanent supportive housing, housing folks who are at risk of or emerging from homelessness. So there's a specific definition that you're required to meet to be eligible for that category, which you'll hear much more about later in the presentation. There are some funding limits and restrictions to note associated with this NOFA. So for projects that are seeking 9% LIHTC in the upcoming April round, we ask that you demonstrate the need for no more than $1 million of gap funding as a viable project. There are folks who may be interested in applying for additional funds related to their scoring. Larry Katranar is going to share more information about that later, but please know we always need to see with your application a version of your pro forma that shows the deal with only $1 million maximum as a gap for a 9% tax credit project. For all others, there's a maximum award of $3 million and two other funding limits to note are that the maximum award per developer per round will be $3 million, and the maximum number of applications per developer per round is $5 million. So we ask you to consider your most viable and most competitive projects. If you are planning to submit multiple applications, we have lots more applications than we're able to fund each round. So it's important that we're really seeing the best and most viable deals from each developer, and that our underwriting team is not sort of bogged down with additional applications for projects that may not be ready. Thank you. So I'm going to turn it over to, I believe, Naomi Beasley Porter, who's the supervisor for multifamily underwriting, to talk through the timeline associated with this NOFA.
Thank you, Rebecca. Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Naomi Beasley Porter. I am the supervisor for multifamily housing underwriting, and just briefly want to reiterate our application and award timeline, which can be found in the published NOFA on the Housing Development webpage. So as you know, our NOFA was issued on the 16th. We did issue a slight revision on the 20th of January, which has been noted and is on our website. We had hosted the public meeting last week, and our pre-application project review meetings are ongoing. So hopefully everyone has, hopefully every project that is interested in potentially submitting has requested a pre-app meeting, as those requests were due on the 30th of the month. If you have not requested it, unfortunately, we have hit our capacity with scheduling. And so, again, just to reiterate, this NOFA is provided twice a year. Well, it is published twice a year, in January and in July. So there will be another opportunity for projects in July. Today is the 3rd, so we're here at the program compliance meeting, where you will hear several HRD departments present on their respective requirements as it pertains to this NOFA. NOFA applications are due via the Neighborly app by on February 24th by 11:59 p.m. All applications for consideration have to go through Neighborly, and all documents and submitted items that you would like us to review for consideration of threshold have to be submitted via Neighborly before that deadline. We will not receive or accept any additional updates or documentation beyond the deadline via email or other channels. It has to be submitted via the Neighborly portal. Excuse me. Threshold approval letters for those projects that are submitted and past threshold will be issued by March 24th. And for 9% LIHTC projects and 4% projects that will be submitted to MISTA, those letters will go out between March 25th and 30th in time for the MISTA application. And commitment level documents for those projects that pass threshold, commitment level documents will be required to be submitted by April 6th at 11:59 p.m. Again, via the Neighborly portal. You will receive, if your project passes threshold, you will receive a notification via Neighborly. One with your letter, but secondly, with a notification that you can move forward with submitting commitment level documents. And again, to reiterate, all projects that pass threshold are required to submit commitment level documents for consideration. If a commitment level documents application is not received, your project is subject to not be considered for scoring and a conditional award. And any additional documents that beyond the commitment level document minimum requirements are to be submitted at that time. We will not receive any additional documents via email or other channels for consideration. Thereafter, projects will be reviewed for scoring, and conditional awards will be made sometime in June. And we will have an opportunity for any questions a little bit later and a couple points throughout the presentation. And at this time, I think, Terry, if you can go to the next slide, I'll be turning over to Larry Katrinar.
Thanks, Naomi. Good morning, everyone. I'm Larry Katrinar, Director of Housing and Development Underwriting in the Housing and Revitalization Department for the City of Detroit. So good morning. I wanted to run through some of the updates just to make sure you see them when you're reviewing the NOFA document for this round. So we've got a couple of pages of these, so there's a few updates this round. So first of all, the first thing is we wanted to make sure that you note that both the development priority section on page 8 and the alignment with city goals section on page 42, which is in the scoring section of the NOFA, they've been updated to indicate that priority projects do include projects that are part of a HUD Choice Neighborhoods program, and also projects that received an award through a City of Detroit RFP process. So both of those types of projects are now considered priority projects, and they would be eligible to receive the 5 points for that scoring item. We've also made an update to the pre-closing construction requirements on page 17. And we've just added an update to note that the developer must require, your agreements with your general contractor must require that the general contractor verify that all subcontractors are not debarred from using federal funds. So that's always been something that's in our loan docs, but we've actually added it to the NOFA this round. The marketing requirements, we made a couple of updates here. On page 18, over the past year or so, we've been going through a process where we've been having a 50%, when the project's at 50% construction completion, we've been started a process where we have a meeting with the development team and the property management team to make sure they're engaged with our Detroit Home Connect portal team and our asset management team to begin the setup of the project and our compliance modules and things. So we've added language regarding that to the marketing section, that you have to understand that you're going to have to join that meeting and participate and be active with that meeting. We also added language in the marketing section regarding the accessible units and the marketing of the accessible units. We want to make sure that we We want your marketing plan to indicate how you're going to be marketing accessible units and document and keep in your records how you did the outreach for those marketing efforts. And Sophia from our policy team will be joining the meeting later on today to talk a little bit more about best practices around accessible units and things. So the next thing, we wanted to note that if you go to the Appendix K in the NOFA on page 49, you'll see a link to the HRD development pro forma instructions. You can go to that link, and there's a couple of updates we want to make sure you notice, and that's one of the important ones, or most important ones, is that we are requiring for this NOFA that projects submit a pro forma with Davis-Bacon wages, even if you're, please remember to mute yourself. That may be just somebody joining. So what I was referring to is when you're doing pro formas this round, we want to make sure that we receive pro formas that both include Davis-Bacon wages and that do not have Davis-Bacon wages. So that would mainly be for projects that you're not necessarily anticipating, having requirements that would trigger Davis-Bacon. But we still want to see we want both pro formas so that we can evaluate, because some of the city sources in this NOFA may trigger Davis-Bacon wages immediately if they're used. So we want to just be able to evaluate each of the projects and make the best determination for the type of funding that might work for the project if it moves forward. So please make a note. You got to do both pro formas, with and without. So you're going to have to get pricing from the general contractor, both with and without Davis-Bacon wages, being applicable. We also want to remind you that for projects that use both 4% and 9% tax credits, we want to see the pro formas for both components. Even if you're just planning on putting the city funds into the 4% component, we want to see and receive the pro formas for both the 4% and 9% sides of the transaction. And I also, this is what Rebecca touched on a little bit earlier, but I did want to remind everyone that your pro formas, when you submit, if you're going to ask for additional funds from the city over and above our limits, which are the $1 million for a 9% tax credit, and it's primarily only to help with scoring, you can ask for more funding to get more credit efficiency points or better score for your project, but you must provide a pro forma and all of the supporting documents for a pro forma that shows the project could be viable for the $1 million award of 9% credits. Or, if it's a 9.4 up to 3 million, but you have to show that it's viable at our limits, but then you can ask for more funds to help with your score if that makes sense. So again, if you have questions around some of this later on, we can talk about that a little bit later. So Terry, I think if we can go to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, so BABA, the Build America, Buy America Act requirements that are on page 19, we made some updates that require the general contractor submit on their letterhead a certification that the project, that they understand that the pricing they provided will comply with BABA or allow the project to meet the BABA requirements. And this has actually been a requirement in our NOFA for a few years, but we wanted to formalize this a little bit more and make sure that that's being effectively communicated to the general contractor team. So we want the general contractor to, again, certify and kind of acknowledge that they understand that the project has to meet the BABA requirements. We also want them to acknowledge that there are city forms that they'll have to use throughout the construction to document that BABA compliance also. So, excuse me 1 minute. Okay. We also have updated the pre-application project review meeting requirements. It's on page 21 of the NOFA, and the city approval and permits in the readiness to proceed scoring section. That's on page 42. Those have been updated to indicate that the preliminary plan review summary from your PPR meeting that you have with the planning department, that PPR summary is a required document to be submitted with your NOFA. And the whole idea of the PPR is to make sure that the project is being reviewed and that you get feedback from the various members of the city team, and consider those when you're actually putting your project together. So we want to make sure that meeting isn't like an afterthought and it's done right before you submit. We want to make sure that you're having that PPR early on in the process, and again, incorporated any feedback from that meeting in your application and in your plans. So we want to make sure that we have that summary to see that meeting's taken place, and that we can see that you've included those items in there. It's also used as part of our scoring section to see, as far as you've met some of the city required, maybe zoning or special land use requirements or things that might be called out during that meeting. It helps we consider that when we're doing the scoring. So let's see, the threshold review section on it starts on page 22, I think goes on to page 23. It's been updated to indicate now that a project that has a MSHDA self-score that's 10 points or more below a competitive score may not pass threshold in our review and continue on for scoring. We're going to look at the most recent 9% MSHDA round and what projects were awarded, and any projects that come into our NOFA that have a self-score that's 10 points or more below that score. Again, we are likely, unless you're granted some type of waiver or something from HRD through some other discussions, we may decide not to spend our efforts and time reviewing those projects that we don't think are really competitively viable to get an award, so that we can really focus our efforts on supporting the projects that we do think are viable and can advance and hopefully get an award from the MSHDA 9% round. We've updated the payment in lieu of taxes or pilot section that begins on page 24 of the NOFA. I think it continues to 25, but it's been updated just to clarify that there is a separate pilot application process, and that submitting to this multifamily NOFA is not the same as applying to that for that pilot. So you have to do both applications, both the pilot and this one. So don't think that just doing this application sort of gets you started in that process, because that's a completely separate process. The alignment with city goals section that's on page 43 has been updated to change what was previously referred to as broadband access. We've now just changed it to refer to internet access. And the requirement now to receive points for that section is aligned with committing to the high-speed internet standards that would be posted in the most recent utilities section of MSHDA's qualified allocation plan, or the MSHDA, the MSHDA scoring process. So you can go to the MSHDA QAP and just make sure your project's meeting the MSHDA requirements, and that you would automatically get the points for us too. We have also updated the 15-point scoring reduction criteria in our NOFA, where we can now projects that are in essence stalled, that aren't moving forward. If a developer has a project that is not moving forward, and we've asked the developer for a plan on how it's going to advance, and we don't get a plan provided on how it's going to advance, or we don't feel like that project is going to move forward, we can now apply that negative 15 point reduction to current applications. Really what we want to make sure is that developers and consultants that have projects that are not moving forward, that they focus on advancing those projects, because if they have a current conditional award, those funds are kind of tied up in that project and not advancing that other projects. We want to make sure that their efforts are focused on advancing projects that they're currently working on, rather than applying for more projects in our NOFA. So that negative 15, we've added language that we may apply it to those projects in that status also. We've added an Appendix N, and I mentioned this, I think, a little bit earlier, that Sophia is going to be talking about this at our later on in the presentation today. But we've added Appendix N that has some attachments and some accessibility best practices guides that have been developed through the City of Detroit's policy team. So please refer to those. You'll see them, like I say, I think it's like page 105. They're toward the back of the NOFA document, but take a look at those. So, and those are, I know that was a lot, but those are the most significant updates to the NOFA that we've made this round. We've done a little bit of wordsmithing throughout it also to maybe just help clarify. No real policy changes in any of those, but to maybe to help add some more clarity and help people better understand what what the intent is on some of the sections. But those are just minor wordsmithing updates throughout the rest of the NOFA. So with that, so you can see this is our agenda slide for today. We're a little bit behind, but from a time perspective, so I'm going to sort of just go ahead and turn it over to Penny in a minute here, but I did want to do that one more reminder for anyone who joined late that we do track attendance. There are points awarded for the developer joining this meeting and the general contractor joining this meeting, 1 point each. So please make sure that we can clearly identify your name in the attendees list. And if not, that you either post something in the chat, or you could send an email to hrdnofa@detroitmi.gov with your phone number, if you just have a phone number to help us connect who you are if you're attending this meeting, and make sure we know which organization and your projects that you're part of. So with that, I would like to, I was just going to mention real quick, Penny, before I have you get started, that we will be not having the presentation from the construction management team this morning. Unfortunately, Mike Neal, who was scheduled to present that, is out sick today. So we won't be having that, but the slides that he was going to present will be part of the package that's posted on the website. You can look at the archives. His slides have not changed, so the information is generally the same. So you can, there's on our website, there's archives of last round's compliance information meetings. So you can certainly go, and if you're interested in seeing the construction section, you can look at that recording and see the information there. So, all right, with that, Penny, if you want to go ahead.
Okay, I can't tell, Terry, if you've got it or I have it. Anybody seeing slides?
We're seeing slides. I think you got it, Penny.
Okay, I see a black screen. Isn't that interesting? These are always fun. So hello, everybody. I am Penny Dwinen, the Environmental Review Officer in the Housing and Revitalization Department, the City of Detroit. So I'm going to talk about the cross-cutting regulations dealing with environmental review. Just to start this conversation, you may have heard a lot of discussion at the federal level about regulations being changed or deleted, rescinded. Right now, as of today, we have no changes in HUD regulations, so we are going to continue until we hear from HUD that they have changed their rules. So I'm not getting any slide change. This is very annoying. Okay, we're all partners in the environmental review process. That includes everybody.
It's not advancing. No.
Let me try to do this again. There we go. This is now me. Do you see the second page, partners in the environmental review process?
Yes, we do.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we are all partners. The City of Detroit HRD team members, you may have been talking to somebody in the program staff on the public-private private partnership team, and to project managers in your housing underwriting team as you have your pre-NOFA application meetings. All of those people are talking to me and my team. You might also have other federal funders, including MISTA, any kind of vouchers, not just Detroit project-based vouchers anymore. We've been using them from other municipalities as well. So then finally, it's you guys as developers and your consultants, attorneys, GCs, any environmental consultants that you hire, and all of the state agencies that we might liaise with at Eagle. So who is required to comply? All federal agencies are required to comply with the NEPA regulations. All HUD entitlement communities, of which Detroit is one, has to comply with the HUD environmental review requirements, and then all projects within the city using one of those HUD allocations. The HUD allocations are not just home and home ARP, which you may be thinking they are, but there's a lot of other HUD projects, HUD funded projects and HUD funding that we will also be involved in. So what laws do we comply with? NEPA is a package of all of these laws and authorities, and they basically just put a bow around all of these other regulations and say you need to comply with all of them. So if you look, your typical environmental due diligence, your phase 1 and 2 environmental site assessments, those land in just one of those laws and authorities, and that's under contamination and toxic substances. But your HUD environmental review really take into account all of these other regulations as well. How do we comply? So the environmental review process begins at the City of Detroit. When you submit an application to the NOFA for federal funding, an application to DHC for project-based vouchers, and any pre-application work that you do with HRD teams, those project managers should be talking to you about environmental review requirements. So once you get a HUD funding award, we go through and we start the actual environmental review process. We work with your hired consultant to get all of that environmental review documentation completed, and then we do a HUD environmental approval, and then we go into construction and NEPA compliance commitments. How do we comply? So this is a you do, we do kind of chart. So defining the project happens by the developer, and it's in the NOFA application. We know that those project definitions change throughout the life cycle of starting a project, and your wishes and dreams down to, you know, a engineered building plan. And so, you know, that's going to change all along here, but really it's defined first in that NOFA application. From that definition, we will determine the level of review. That's a term of art that only my team can make that determination. If you're talking to your consultant, make sure that they understand that the City of Detroit makes that determination. We're happy to discuss that, but it's us that has to do that. Conduct the environmental review is done by your hired environmental consultant. And then finalizing that review all the way from the request for release of funds to the authority to use grant funds, that's done by our team here at the city. Then you guys are going to get the approval to commit and expend HUD funds. All of those payments go through our other teams, and that project gets done. Scope changes after the release. So again, if that project gets changed in the field, you find underground storage tanks, you find archaeological artifacts, anything like that can change any physical need for that site. And so we're going to talk about scope changes after the release of funds, and then we're going to go into construction and continuing obligations. So a lot of the sites in Detroit have contamination and will need to have continuing obligations basically for the life of the HUD involvement, which is 30, 40, 50 years, depending on your funding. I want to give a real quick discussion on choice limiting actions, which is actually in the HUD rules called the limitation of action, but we call them choice limiting actions because that's what HUD calls them. So basically you cannot do anything to a site that you're going to apply for HUD funds or you have applied for HUD funds on to limit the choice of using that site or not. So the until the environmental review is done. So you cannot acquire a piece of property. You can't sign a contract for any work that's being done on that project, on that property, disposition, demolition, rehab, repair, renovation, construction, conversion. There's no purchasing or vacating alleys, things like that, that would make you owner of another part of that property. We must do the review before any of these actions are taken. So the RE must make a determination on the appropriate action and making sure that you are following the intent for funds, which is your application date. So again, here's a list of choice limiting actions. You can bid a contracted service with the NEPA rewind language, which is provided in the NOFA, but you cannot sign a contract. You can just do the bidding. You can have a development agreement. Again, that must include the NEPA rewind language, and the same with a contract option to purchase. Must have that NEPA rewind language. So basically, the responsible entity could also have a choice limiting action. That's if we commit funds before the environmental review is done. We cannot close or sign loan agreements or contracts. We cannot commit in the HUD world in our funding system until that environmental review is done. This also extends to all third parties. So you as a recipient or any of your contractors and subcontractors, you can't sign any of their agreements until our environmental review is done. If you have any questions on that throughout the process, you're going to have several project managers and myself that you can reach out to. And we just want to make sure that we're doing the right thing so that we don't get violations. Regulatory and statutory violations could happen if we do choice limiting actions, and we don't want to pay back HUD for something that we didn't even get to build because you did a choice limiting action early on. I want to talk for a minute about what a meaningful project description must include. So you're going to need all of this information in that application, and then we will use that as we flow through the project and get it funded and or a conditional award, and we move through the environmental review process. It's really, really important that we know all the aspects of a project. So part of that definition of the project includes the concept of aggregation. So projects you can't determine that you're not using HUD funding for a demolition and then demo before the application. That is a choice limiting action. So you have to aggregate all of the project activities: acquisition, demolition, and construction. We can't just pay for the acquisition of a site when you're going to do a big construction project. That construction project also needs to be part of the environmental review. Most of these projects are going to require what's called an environmental assessment. The environmental assessment includes all new construction or substantial rehab of structures, or 5 or more clustered homes, or adaptive reuse, conversion of one type of land use to another. I will also say that we consider any apartment building, even though it's not a conversion from housing to housing, if it has been vacant for more than 3 to 5 years, kind of depending on the site, we're going to also require this environmental assessment. The environmental assessment is to evaluate the project as a whole. So it's not just to identify the impacts to the resident, but it's also the impacts to the environment. So it looks at both directions of our projects. There's 3 really large environmental review hurdles. One is the floodplain. You need to understand that HUD has new rules. Some of them may have been.
So what I do now?
Can somebody mute?
The dogs are gonna be here till 11. I gotta wait till they come. Yeah.
Somebody needs to mute, please. Thank you. Okay, so floodplain rules, some of these rules are still there, some are being rescinded. It's very unclear, but we're going to still stick with there's no new construction or substantial rehab in the 100 or 500-year floodplain without compliance with the 8-step process. So the 8-step process will require a civil engineer and floodplain experts, and you must work with our team very early in the process to make sure that we know what our requirements are to comply with. Contamination is your second hurdle. Both the floodplain and contamination can take a long time to get approvals for, so we need to make sure that we're really working the process. You have to have a good consultant who understands the HUD rules and understands what Eagle is going to require for residential use of a site. Most projects will require a response activity plan to be approved, and potentially, again, those long-term obligations through the life of the HUD involvement, which is 30, 50 years. I mean, it's a very long time. Section 106 is your third environmental hurdle. I mean, all of the other laws and authorities have to be complied with, but these are the three that may take the longest and cost the most, to be honest. So, you know, there's another timing hurdle with Section 106. Understanding the funding source in all of the federal agencies that are funding your project. Incomplete project description really hampers your Section 106 review. And then the need for archaeology and project segmentation later in the review becomes very important. So on that note, we're going to talk about the importance of choosing consultants wisely. You're going to need at least 2, probably 3 consultants for each of your larger developments. One that specializes in environmental contamination, one that specializes in Section 106 historical review, and one that specializes in archaeology if that's triggered for your project. So understand that all of these people, if you're in the floodplain, you may need a civil engineer. If you've got noise, you're going to need to employ your architect for that piece as well. So just understand that you need to have a good working relationship with these consultants, and we do too. We work with them all the time. So if you don't have relationships built already, MISTA has qualified consultants lists on their website, and I am happy to share that list with you if you need some information. So in this NOFA environmental review and scoring, what we are going to be looking at is if you have the potential to have contamination on your site, and if you're rehabbing, if you know the status of your lead, asbestos, and radon. We give part of the construction readiness for construction score. So if we know that you need a response activity plan and it's going to take a long time, and that you're in the floodplain and we're going to have to do the 8-step process, and it's a historic building, we know that that's going to take a lot longer to complete the environmental review than a project that comes in with no recognized environmental conditions. There's no reason to believe it's contaminated. It's a vacant lot, so there's no historical conditions. So just understand that that's what our points are based on. And I know I took too much time, but I'm going to just remind everybody that we are a team in environmental compliance, and my team is charged with ensuring environmental compliance with the HUD rules. So we always try to find options to make your deal work within those requirements. And I'm done. I'll stay for questions after all the compliance meetings or presentations.
Great, thanks, Penny. I believe our next presenter is our labor standards, Davis-Bacon and prevailing wage requirement team, so our labor standards team. So Jackie or Jacqueline, are you going to be presenting this morning?
I will be, and Manita
Good
is
morning.
going to, good morning, and Manita is going to share, well, I see she already has it up. She's going to share her, do the slides for me. Good morning, everybody. As mentioned, I am Jacqueline Jackson, the I say the lead team person. It says manager of the Davis-Bacon team. And I'm going to present to you this morning about the labor standards, Davis-Bacon, and prevailing wages requirements. That's if your projects are subject to Davis-Bacon, this is what we will be requiring. The labor standards and the Davis-Bacon Act, we will be monitoring and enforcing the compliance for the Davis-Bacon Act. Next slide. The Davis-Bacon Act was enacted in 1931, just for a little history, and amended in 35 and 64. It applies to the federal construction contracts over $2,000. It covers alterations, repairs, painting, and decorating activities on federally funded construction projects. It applies to laborers and mechanics, and it requires weekly payment of prevailing wages. We know that a lot of companies pay every 2 weeks, but when you are giving the grant funds and Davis-Bacon is applicable, it is a requirement that you pay them on a weekly basis. Next slide, please. Our general purpose is to ensure that the proper payment of the wages to the laborers and mechanics working on the federally funded construction projects. We don't expect the general contractors not to make a profit, but we do expect that the people working on those job sites are to be making the prevailing wages. The summary of the requirements are that prevailing wages must be paid, like I mentioned before, at least once per week, that the premium pay for overtime hours worked over 40 in a work week, and that there are to be no unauthorized payroll deductions at that job site. The CFR will let you know, or as we get into pre-construction meetings or however it'll be, we'll let you know what is authorized and what isn't going forward. Next slide, please. Our key objectives is to apply the federal labor standards properly, to support the contractor's compliance through education and guidance, to monitor the contractor's performance, to identify and follow up on any underpayments, and to pursue debarment actions against repeat violators. Our team, made up of myself, Monique Campbell, and Jennifer Thomas Chopecco. We are always available to support you, to help you get your documentation and compliance. We do have smart sheets that you'll have access to, so you'll know where you are in the process. We do monitor, like we said, the contractor's performance. We identify if there are any problems early on and contact you so that we can be working on it efficiently together. And if we find that there are any underpayments, we will let you know about that too, so that you can have the restitution paid sooner than later. And if we have any issues or constant issues with people who are not paying proper wages, we can and will suggest that you be debarred from working on federally funded projects. Next, please. The payment requests come through us to be signed off on in the process. We've signed off on applicable CDBG funded construction payments, applicable home funded projects, payments to service companies, i.e. architects, environmental companies, and cleaning companies, payments to suppliers, and on acquisition when construction is included in part of the contract. Next, please. The required documents for payment approval are listed here. We need AIA documents, sworn statements. I can't see that. Current weekly certified payrolls, submission of all the required labor standard documents that we discussed with you in the pre-con meeting, the waivers of lien, invoices and receipts, and letters from the subrecipient or the owner requesting the funds. Next, please. The payment approval delays. and I surely hope we can get past this. If there is restitution owed to employees, if the current payrolls have not been submitted, and we have it now that if they are not within the last 2 weeks, they are not considered current because they are supposed to be submitted every week. If your payment package is missing required documentation, if contractors fail to resolve any outstanding issues, such as missing documentation or restitution, or if there are outstanding liens on the project, these are the things that will hold up the delay, hold up the approval of your payment. We work with you and try to stay in touch with you all constantly so that when you submit a payment, it can flow off our desk. We're not trying to hold it up any more than you want it held up. So when you have, if you do have a project that is Davis-Bacon applicable, please submit your documentation in a timely manner. Next, please. Really, that was all I had. We were kind of quick here. We saving some time. Our labor standards team is made up of Miss Angela Thompson, who is the Director of Labor Compliance, which is labor standards and Section 3. I am the team lead, Jacqueline Jackson, and again, Jennifer Thomas, Chopeckin, and Monique Campbell will be the people that'll be working on your projects. We are consistent across the board, and if you have a problem with one project, the one thing that we didn't mention in here, there is a new rule that now if there's an issue with a payment or with a contractor and them paying their people correctly, if they're on more than one project, we can hold payments across projects, not just that one. So please, again, I reiterate to submit your documentation correct and in a timely fashion. That's all I have. And I know next up is Patricia Ford with Section 3.
Yes. Hi, Jackie. Thank you. Good morning,
You're
everyone.
welcome. Good morning.
All right. Like Jackie said, my name is Patricia Ford, and I'm the program manager for Section 3. Section 3 is another one of the regulations that you have to adhere to for these projects. Now, Section 3 has been around since 1968. The whole purpose for Section 3 is to ensure that employment and other economic opportunities generated by these funds for housing and community development, to the greatest extent feasible, are extended to what is considered low and very low income persons, which we call Section 3 workers. And the information that we collect today has been updated, and that was released in the fall of 2020. So we are 5 years in with this new regulation for updated regulation for Section 3. Now, if your project is receiving $200,000 or more, which all of you are going to receive, well, not all of you, but if you have a conditional award, it triggers Section 3. And the type of funds are the home funds or CDBG or choice neighborhood type funds. Now, I like to start off with the end result of what you have to do for Section 3. So HUD require us under the updated rule of Section 3 to collect hours. So HUD is going to ask us for each and every project. They're going to require us to report out total labor hours on the project. So we have to keep track of all the labor hours on the project. And within those total labor hours, again, we hope that we go through this process that you will have some Section 3 worker hours. And the goal is to reach 25% of the total labor hours were performed by Section 3 workers. And there's another term, targeted Section 3 workers. And those total hours by the end of the project, 5% of those hours were performed by targeted Section 3 workers. So that's the end result. So we have to report these hours for each and every project back to HUD. Now, where you are today is in the compliance phase of your projects or your formation stage of your project. So section 3 is broken down into two branches, compliance and verification. So here you are, you probably already saw, you have some documents you need to complete for your NOFA package for section 3. That's your intent to comply and your section 3 plan. Skip the slide, sorry about that. And then also there's the verification branch for section 3 is that we have to verify businesses as a section 3 business, and we have to go through the process, and hopefully we can identify some employees as section 3 workers and or targeted section 3 workers. Now, for all the contractors on this call, you can say you are section 3, but if you do not have a letter verifying you are section 3 from me, we cannot count you as a section 3 business. So for all of those who want to be verified as section 3, you can go through the process. You can contact me. You can go through your general contractor to contact me to fill out the paperwork for section 3. You can verify yourself through ownership or through your employees as a section 3 business. And again, we will go through the process and I will actually give you a letter verifying you as a section 3 business. Now, we hope that also that you will go through the process, but you actually may have some employees already on your payroll that meet the section 3 worker status or requirements. So if you have hired someone within the past 5 years, and when you hired them, they may have met the income requirement for section 3. We can count them. If you hired them 2 years ago, we can count them for another 3 years. That's if they're over income. If they currently meet the income requirements, we can continue to count them. But and the whole goal is to hire someone and to improve their quality of life, but they may, once you hired them and they're over income, we can still count them for another few years because when you hired them, they met the income requirements. On our section 3 webpage, we do have information on the income requirements. So if you hired someone a year, 2 or 3 ago, we do have the income information on our webpage. And so I want to go back to the 2 documents that you need to complete in your NOFA. Your intent to comply. So remember, your 2 documents must be completed by both the developer and your general contractor on the project. And make sure you actually take the time to look at your documents, especially your section 3 plan. As you can see on the screen, we give you some options or suggestions of outreach efforts, because each project must do some type of outreach to businesses that may meet section 3 and to outreach to individuals that may meet the section 3 worker requirements. Now, you do not, let me repeat, you do not have to say yes to everything. But what you do say yes to, we have to verify that you actually did those outreach efforts. So these are some of the things that you can do to outreach to individuals. And these are some of the options that you see on the screen that you can outreach to businesses. Some suggestions also is that you can think about training programs on this project. You can think about to help out for individuals that may be apprentice on the project. You may also want to have contracts and you cut them in half or the scope of that contract, that some of the smaller subcontractors can actually bid on these jobs. Again, I just mentioned outreach efforts, and we do have a new partnership with the Michigan Regional Council of Carpenters and Millwrights, so the MRCC. So they are actually keeping track of individuals that meet Section 3, journeymen and apprentices. So you may actually have some journeymen that meet the income requirements for Section 3, even though their hourly rate may be over a certain amount, but their annual rate may meet the Section 3 requirements. This slide here, I kept it in. The Michigan tax credit has expired as the end of 2025. Excuse me, but we have heard that the state of Michigan may be updating their tax credits, and they may bring it back. So I just wanted to keep it on the slide for you all to maybe check back with the state of Michigan. And this is a work opportunity tax credit. So if you have to hire someone, you may be able to qualify for some tax credits with the state of Michigan to offset the salary. So we're hoping they will bring it back. And if not, you also have the opportunity for the Small Business Association of Michigan for some type of tax credit. So again, you're here because of the type of funding, and we have to track labor hours. We have to track total labor hours, and the whole goal that HUD has set forth that 25% of those hours, again, were performed by Section 3 workers. And within that 25%, that 5% of those hours were performed by targeted Section 3 workers. So if you can actually verify as a Section 3 business, we can count everyone on the job for your business under Section 3. So that's a win of being verified as a Section 3 worker. And then if you as a Section 3 business have Section 3 workers, we can count your workers under total, Section 3, and targeted. And then also it gives you the opportunity, or hopefully a goal, to retain these individuals, and we can count them for up to 5 years once they're over income. And to that also give individuals that you are helping to improve the quality of life of individuals that's considered a Section 3 worker. And then also it let HUD know that the City of Detroit projects, we are really making an effort to hire individuals and to work and report hours for Section 3. Like Jackie has mentioned, we are a team. So for any of the projects, you may receive me. Again, I'm the program manager. I'm Patricia Ford, and then team members, Felicia Harrison and Lisa Robinson. So you may receive any of us on the projects. So Larry, that completes my presentation.
Thank you, Patricia. All right, we have built into the agenda some time at this point for any questions that anyone may have for any of the presenters that already presented this morning. So we've got about 15 minutes built in. You can feel free to drop questions into the chat or raise your hand, and we will, someone will call on you in order, and then we can go through the questions. So, so I see a user named Senator. So Senator, did you have a question this morning? You can unmute yourself and ask your question. So.
Good morning, everybody. We have a company now where we've been buying Section 8 housing independently and like hiring the contractors ourselves, whatnot. So we were buying single family homes. We're not doing multifamily homes. And right now we want an initiative to really help the community and build up affordable housing in Detroit. So our goal is to buy 60 homes. Could we use the grant to do that? Just to not to buy the homes, but to do the repairs.
Yeah, it sounds like, Senator, it sounds like you're describing what we would call a scattered site type development. So have you engaged at all with anyone on the public-private partnership team yet to discuss your plans in the city?
No, to be honest, the way that I even found you guys is I've been seeing a lot of the stuff you see on the news about people like scamming the system, and I thought it was like crazy that people like us that are doing things the right way, we want to help people, want to build community, and then you got all these people doing it the wrong way. So that made me start looking up like programs, and I
Sure.
found this program like about 4 days ago. So it's all new information to me.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you found us. So it's because it sounds like you have some great goals and objectives for work in the city. So my suggestion to, and this is for anyone, any of the developers who are anticipating doing projects in the city, my first recommendation is always to engage with the city has a team in what I was referring to as the public-private partnership team, Senator, and
Yeah,
that what that team does is works with development teams and sort of helps developers like get through the various processes at the city and helps also evaluate maybe the best options for funding to consider for projects depending on the type of project and things that you may be considering. So um, I think
yeah,
that's always a great first step. And I don't know if Naomi or I don't know if Jason is on right now. Jason Friedman leads our public-private partnership team, but we can drop Jason's contact information in the chat.
okay.
Sarah, did you schedule a pre-application meeting?
Yeah, yeah, so that was what I was gonna say. So I called the phone number. They referred me to your email, so I sent an email, and then we registered the business and whatnot. And then Jason said that we didn't do it in time, but I swear to God, we did it on the
Okay.
29th in the
Okay.
morning. But we're in
Oh,
California, so we're a few
okay.
hours um behind, but we did it everything on the 29th.
Okay. Okay. Well, we can see. I mean, it sounds like your plans may be a little bit um, early on, if you don't have all your projects identified and you just have a scope. So I think the best thing to do, and I see Deandra dropped in, actually, there's a public-private partnerships at detroitmi.gov like group email account that you can reach out to and just
Okay.
reach out to that team because that probably out of the pre-application meeting that would have been the main accomplishment maybe during that meeting would have been to get you connected with them first anyway. So I
Yeah,
think that
because
may that may be the best first step for you.
yeah, we have a performer. We have like we're literally like finding people on our own. So if you already have like contractors that you guys want us to work with, that only helps us because then we know that they've been certified by the right people because we've, went through some bumps and bruises doing it by ourselves. So this to me is amazing and it only helps the overall objective of trying to help more people get housing. And
Sure.
if we could, it's a win-win. If we can help people and we can make profit, that's a beautiful thing. So I'm very excited about everything I'm hearing.
Okay. Yeah. Connect with the P3 team and good luck with your development. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks. Uh, I see. It looks like Matthew Williams. Question?
Yes, good afternoon or good morning, and thank you, Larry and team, for this presentation, which is really informative. I have a two-parter. My first part is directed towards Penny with regard to choice limiting action. As you guys are well aware, MISTA requires site control for 4 and 9% applications. And so if we have an active purchase agreement and we intend to apply for a 9% in this upcoming April round, does that mean we just need to sequence closing so that we're closing on the property at the same time we're closing on financing so that we don't violate that choice limiting action, Penny?
Yes, and I would also go in and add an addendum to your agreement that has that NEPA rewind language in it.
Okay, that makes sense. And then my second part is kind of similar to the first person's question, which is in relation to project review meetings. We also submitted the request for a pre-application review meeting on Friday's deadline or by Friday's deadline, but have not yet received a confirmation of a meeting time. Are those still being scheduled?
Yes, there are some meetings still being scheduled. We had blocked out a bunch of times on our calendars, and I think we just identified that we needed to extend into like Monday of next week to try to accommodate all the later requests that came in. But hopefully, someone will be reaching out. I know I just updated some reserved some times late last night for the person who's helping coordinate those. So hopefully you should hear something very soon.
Okay, perfect. If meeting times coincide with the time that we did not ask for, then we're totally amenable and we'll adjust so that we can be counted in this first round. Thank you.
Very good. I see Brooke. Looks like you have a question. Brooke Malik. You want to unmute and ask your question, Brooke?
I'm sorry. Hi. Before my question, I just want to thank you all for taking the time to walk the applicants through this process. My question is, are there elements in neighborhood-based projects that tend to score particularly well with reviewers, such as like local hiring, veteran services, or long-term sustainability?
Yeah. You can actually, if you look in the NOFA, Brooke, our scoring criteria and how we score the projects is included in the NOFA. So you can see all the things that we evaluate. Certainly, all of those things are taken into consideration when the scoring, but it's really a kind of an objective scoring process where we consider those, like I say, all those items that are in the scoring. So we're looking at the strength of the development team. We're looking at the financing of the project. We're looking at the alignment with city priorities and the goals of the NOFA. And then looking at, as Penny said, one of her scoring items is like readiness to proceed. That's in that category. We're looking at how ready the project is to move forward so that if we make a conditional award, we're looking for projects that can move toward active construction within a very seamless timeline as much as possible. So those projects would score more, would score higher. So but you can see, like I say, you can see the scoring process. And what happens is we get an application, we first review it to see if it passes threshold, meaning that it shows that it meets the objectives, it's financially viable, it seems to have most of the things to move forward. Those projects then get a threshold approval letter is issued to the projects that pass threshold. Those that don't get a threshold denial letter, but we issue that threshold approval letter, and then there is a second round of documents that gets submitted for the project, and then it's scored by the underwriting team and presented to the award committee to determine a final score, and then the projects are ranked based on their scores. Is how it's kind of the process. So, but yeah. But definitely review the NOFA, take a look at all the, how the scoring is, and let us know. You can always ask questions to the HRD NOFA. So it's HRDNOFA at detroitmi.gov email address.
Okay.
So
Thank you so much. Very helpful.
sure. Thanks, Brooke.
Thanks.
Yep. Cecily?
Hi, Larry. Quick question. So earlier in the presentation, you all were emphasizing the fact that this is not the pilot application, which I understand. Is there an expectation that we're submitting the pilot application along with this NOFA, or can we submit the pilot application later?
You can submit the pilot application later, and sometimes a pilot application may be a project that's not even coming into this NOFA. So they don't necessarily have to be synced. Would be my take, Cecily. So
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Larry.
sure. Okay. Any other questions? I'm trying to see. I don't know, Terry or somebody. Are you guys checking the chat? Do we see anything in the chat?
Dr. Jay has a hand up.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, thank you so much for that. And you guys definitely mentioned this, but the signal was a little spotty. But could you again speak to Well, two questions. Who's covering the cost for the environmental review? And then there was language in the NOFA that said that funds couldn't be allocated towards mortgages, but then it said that it could in a way or form. Could you clarify?
Sure. The I'm trying sometimes these I try to picture what the question is. So as far as the funding, the city funds are like basically you could consider them on a like a reimbursement type basis. So a project, because we don't have like a pre-development application opportunity in this NOFA. So any like environmental review costs or anything that are done up front, you can subsequently be reimbursed for those costs, but we need to have that environmental review kind of done before you can receive a conditional award, because it's all part of the evaluation in moving the project, because we can't close on it till it's environmentally cleared. So I think that hopefully that answers that question. The NOFA funds are primarily for construction and pre-development type costs. Your architect, engineering, any of those soft cost type things to get to a closing. They're not intended to just be a refinancing mechanism. So maybe that's what you were seeing in the NOFA. I'm not sure which exact section that you were seeing, Jay, but
So I'll clarify here. So there is a product at 203K that allows you to acquire, even if it's barren land, the land itself, and then cover construction cost. Or with the same program, if there is a dilapidated piece of property that you want it developed, then you could use that avenue of that product to do just that. So I was really trying to clarify if NOFA funds could be used to supplement the down payment cost for an affordable unit to be built using that program.
I'm trying to envision what you're trying to do. This would, I mean, our funds for this NOFA, right, are gap dollars. So, and the idea of this NOFA is to provide basically gap funding because of the deep affordability that the project would have. So the intent is that the project has a fully baked pro forma. You've got all your sources and uses figured out. You've maximized all your private lending sources. You've figured out if you're using low-income housing tax credits or some other equity source to raise equity for the project. And then with all of those sources, if there's still a gap because the project possibly can't get as high of a mortgage because the NOI is lower because it's got lower rents, this is the NOFA that you would come into to request we fill that gap. And our funding in this NOFA has very low debt annual costs because we're anticipating that you're leveraging as much debt that you can actually afford to pay for yourself with your private lending source. So our debt, you might get $1 million loan on a 9% tax credit and your annual payment is $2,500 a year. That's it. It's because we don't think you're going to have any money, but we're trying to promote and supplement the ability of a project to provide affordable housing in the city. Now that loan will still come due at the end of 30 or 40 years, with an opportunity to maybe extend that and continue to provide the affordable housing after that. There will be a balloon, but that's kind of what this funding is for. So we can use, but the funding, once it's in that capital stack, once you close, we could reimburse generally any of the costs that are in that pro forma, other than anything that might be directly tied to a payment going to the city of Detroit. Like if you were buying land directly from the city of Detroit, we would not use federal funds to reimburse you for the cost, so that in essence, we're paying the money to the city. We wouldn't do anything and we tend to also now want to pay for like permits that are paid to the city of Detroit and things like that, so that we're not using the federal funds and have the city benefit directly from the funds. So.
Well, that makes a ton of sense. Thank you so much for that.
Help? Yeah. Okay.
It did.
Hopefully that helped. Okay. Anything else in the chat, like I say, that hasn't been answered yet?
I answered in the chat.
Okay, you answered the one, Penny, that I see here. So
Yeah.
And the email, as far as the presentation, the recording, if you're in the meeting, the recording should appear. I mean, the recording will be posted to the HRD website. The recording teams also post the recording into the chat after the meeting, I believe. So you should be able to have access to this recording after the fact. And the slides will be made available also on the website after the meeting. And Debbie, it sounds like all your questions regarding the environmental hopefully have been answered. So are there work days or office hours set up for this NOFA? We really just have the pre-application review meetings to sort of go through the projects. We don't really have office hours necessarily set up, but if you have any questions, you can always send those to the hrdnofa@detroitmi.gov email address. And would we be eligible for the program based on the cutoff date? Not sure, Senator, what you meant by that. So I don't know if you want to come off mute and clarify that question.
Oh, yeah, I didn't hear what you said if we were eligible because we applied on the 29th.
Oh, for the meeting, I think, like I said, I think your best bet is to actually connect with the public-private partnership team. And then if they feel that we need to have a separate meeting, they can try to get something onto our calendars to do that, Senator. So connect with them. I think that's the best way to go.
Is there a link or what do I need, an email?
Yeah, it was posted. If you look at in the thread in the chat, Deandra at 11:05 posted a link, and it's just public-private partnerships with an S at detroitmi.gov. You can send an email to that email address and request a connection with the public-private partnership team. Okay. All right. I think with that, we will have another Q&A session at the end of the presentations later on, but I think with that, I would like to get us back to the presentations. And I think our next one is Russell Baltimore. And I don't know if James Foster is here also, but they're going to talk about the preliminary plan review process. So turn it over to you guys.
Thanks, Larry. Do you want me to share my screen or is somebody going to walk through our slides? I could share if need be.
Yeah, you may want to just share to be able to control it better, Russell.
Okay. All right. All right, can we see that?
Yes. Yes.
All right, fantastic. Good morning, everybody. I'm Russell Baltimore with Planning and Development. I'm in charge of design review. And I'm here talking about the preliminary plan review process. This is our way. PPRs are like a first introduction to the project, so we see what you're doing. You get to engage with members from each department that usually reviews your projects. So they're available for, if you have an idea for a project. We do this for like pretty much, we would like all projects to go through this. Some of them don't, the ones that, privately held and they're just funding it themselves. But if you are receiving funding, you kind of have to have the PPR and design review. So during the PPR sessions, again, you meet with representatives from each department. We'll walk you through some of the requirements. The main goal is to try and get you on the right track so that there's no hiccups in the review process, just to give you all the information we can up front as soon as we can to point you in the right direction. So, because our process here in Detroit could be kind of confusing depending on the direction you're going. So the PPRs are a good way to just get an initial understanding of the project and be able to figure out the right path for you to go so that there's no hiccups, no having to go back to square one. And the process runs pretty smoothly. It can be quite challenging, but we're here to try and help these projects move forward. So the benefits of the PPR, of course, this is a free service. You don't have to pay for it. And you get to meet with the people that will be reviewing your projects up front. It's open to all project types. We sort of set your sort of pathway through the entitlement process, or hearings, the SLU hearings, the BZA, all of those things. Identify code and zoning requirements, identify stormwater management requirements. Again, you have access to every department of the city. You'll meet the person usually in that meeting, and then you'll, at the end of it, you get a roadmap and some comments on your development stack that you provide to us before the meeting. So the way that you get a PPR is you can go to the Development Resource Center at detroitmi.gov/DRC. That gets you to our resource center and the permit portal and all of that. You hit submit for a PPR. We have a form that pops up and you fill out the details of your drawings, so details of your project. Submit some drawings along with that, any list of questions you may have, things that you want answered during the PPR, and then you submit that. Typically, we like to see as much of your idea, your project as possible. Plans, sections, site plans. Site plans are the most important thing because we want to know where this building sits on the site. It's our first way to gauge whether the building is appropriate for the site and all those things and all the requirements that are needed. So buildings, sections, elevations, floor plans, site plans. If you have a 3D massing, or depending on how far you are, elevations, whatever, as much information you can get, the better the PPR meeting will go. So from PDD, the design review team, we will take a look at your set, mark it up, provide comments, give you some precedents and some inspirational direction, but then you'll also get detailed comments from other departments in the summary that, they will list what went on during the meeting, who do you need to call, provide your email addresses. If there's any zoning questions, links to the zoning sections, all that stuff is in that summary along with our comments, and it will set you up, give you a roadmap to how to get your project built. And that's the main thing we want. And so a high level roadmap for a typical projects, you have the PPR, preliminary meeting, typically for design review approval, 2 to 3 meetings. You have a PPR, then we have a follow-up meeting to make sure that all the comments that were made during the PPR are addressed. And then you get approval. And then once you submit for your building permit, you either go to site plan review or plan review. If it's site plan review, you have hearings that are set up, conditional land use hearings, BZA, site plan approval, any of those things with conditions, and then you get your permit and you're off to the races. So again, the PPR process is our initial design review meeting, and then we have sometimes 2, 3 meetings after that, or just follow-ups where you submit your drawings. If it's pretty self-evident that you've hit all the bases and you're off to the races, we don't even need to have a meeting. We can just do it, reviewing your drawings and making sure that you satisfied all the comments from the PPR, and then you're off to the races with site plan review. Since you're seeking incentives, this is an incentive meeting. You'll have initial review process for the PPR. Design review approval is required before you get your brownfield tax. Then you have site plan review. You'll need some community meetings, public hearings, and then you get your entitlements and improvements. And that's when you get your certificate of approval for your tax benefits. And then if it's just a land sale and approval, if it's a land sale, again, we'll have the PPR, city council and the board will need to, the land bank authority will need to have our design review approval before you get the approval to buy the land. And then once you are approved, you're off to the races. You have site plan review, any community engagement if needed, public hearings if required, and then at the end of it, you can sell, buy your land and close. So pretty quick. You could reach out to myself or James Foster if you have any questions, or we can facilitate any meeting with any issues you may have. Feel free to reach out to us. We're here to help you. We want to see your projects get done, and we want to help improve the city of Detroit. So thank you all. That's all I got.
Thanks, Russell. That was great.
Yep.
Okay, I think the next group that's going to be presenting, Eric Andrews and Kyle Ofori, are going to be talking about the Uniform Relocation Act requirements for projects that are occupied, I believe.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kyle Ofori. I serve as the Director of Preservation and Asset Management, and I'm joined by Eric Andrews, who I will let introduce himself in more detail.
Hi, Eric Andrews, Preservation Manager, specializing in preserving units with affordable housing.
All right, and looks like I need to practice my screen sharing abilities, but today we're going to be presenting on occupied redevelopments, the Uniform Relocation Act, and Section 104D. We'll talk a little bit about the City of Detroit's requirements as it relates to all of this, and then just get into the introductions on each of those specific sets of requirements. We'll break out the acronyms and all of that. And then we'll talk a bit about the specific assistance that you, as developers of projects that are occupied, will have to provide for the residents. We'll go into the notices that you're required to send. And then finally, we'll end with the reminders or with some reminders and resources. So that's just a brief outline. We'll try to keep it to, I think, our 15 minutes. If it's less, somebody let me know. All right, and I'll pass it to Eric here to talk about the City of Detroit requirements.
Great. So the goal of preservation is to basically not displace residents. So we don't want any permanent displacement resulting from any city-supported redevelopments of occupied projects. We'll go over the tenant retention standards in the required plan, and we'll talk a little bit about URA and Section 104 compliance. So tenant retention standards, what are they? So we want to limit initial rent increases for any returning residents. Those caps are going to be 5% or set at 30% of monthly income. That 5% is generally in the first year. We want to limit ongoing rental increases to the lesser of 3% per year, or the max set by HUD or MISTA as applicable. The minimum communication standards is basically the URA plus a meeting here with the city rep. And you have the right to return within a 12-month lease offer for any residents who are relocated. We want to do phased construction to limit relocation where possible, and give any assistance with relocation and payment of relocation costs and all other requirements as it pertains to URA. Next slide. No problem. All right, so what does the tenant retention plan consist of? So basically, it is a summary of the redevelopment strategy and the plan for preventing displacement. There's an affordability plan, there is a tenant communication plan, and there's a tenant habitability plan. And that kind of just goes over any construction scope, timelines, plan for residents, any temporary relocation plans, service interruptions, disabilities, et cetera, and we're looking also to have the contact information for any pertinent people involved in the project. Other way.
Oh, Excuse me. There we go.
No problem. All right. So tenant retention plan timing. If you have an existing plan, you're going to submit that with the NOFA application. Your plan must be submitted and reviewed prior to any conditional award letters, and the plan must be finalized and approved prior to closing.
All right, I'll move into this next section to talk about an introduction to the Uniform Relocation Act, Section 104D, and relocation. So again, URA stands for the Uniform Relocation Act, short form for a much longer name from an act of 1970. And it establishes the minimum federal requirements for acquiring property and performing relocation assistance for any projects that receive federal funding. So it's actually broader than just housing, but we use it plenty in this field. Projects have to follow URA anytime they're receiving federal funds for use in a property that's going to be acquired, rehabilitated, or demolished. That's what's happening here when you're applying through the NOFA for, in this case, it's Home Investment Partnerships Program funds. Low-income housing tax credits by themselves don't count as federal assistance, but the state of Michigan through Michigan State Housing Development Authority for some projects will also have its own. They will also monitor URA requirements, but we're monitoring them here through the NOFA. Section 104D is a similar rule, but used more specifically for projects that involve demolition of any dwelling or conversion of lower income dwellings that are tied to CDBG or home funds. If there's a likelihood, or if it's the case that someone who is low income is going to be displaced as a result of a project that requires this funding, then Section 104D relocation assistance is going to be required as well. So we'll work with you to know which one of these is the case. But if you're not demolishing any buildings or reducing the total number of low-income units, then it's likely that Section 104D will not apply. Definitions about permanent displacement versus temporary, you'll hear us talk about those. A displaced person is defined as anyone who moves from one property, who moves out of a property as a direct result of like rehab, demo, or plans to do either one for a project. It doesn't require people who aren't required to relocate permanently. It's only if it has to happen that a person is considered permanently displaced. And then we have, within the Uniform Relocation Act, folks who are going to have to be temporarily relocated for more than 12 months have the options to be considered permanently displaced for the sake of the rights that come with that. So they can choose to be temporarily relocated for a certain amount of time, or they can actually just permanently relocate to the unit that had been their temporary unit if it's available to do so. Or they can receive URA advisory services and just permanently relocate elsewhere. So those are the three options, all of which are tied to permanent displacement. Temporary relocation, again, we consider that to be anything that's less than 12 months. And as I mentioned, at the 12-month mark, if folks are temporarily relocated, or if folks have been temporarily relocated for that long, they must be offered the same options as people who are permanently displaced. If you know folks are going to be gone during the construction period for longer than 12 months already, you can get ahead of that by just simply offering them all of those rights at the beginning, all of those options at the beginning. So this chart is just to briefly compare those. We talked a little bit about the difference in services that folks can get. Permanent displacement comes with a few more beyond the advisory services, comparable replacement housing and moving expense payments. They may also be eligible for replacement housing payments and something called housing of last resort, which is to say you might have to exceed the amount that would be calculated for how much they should receive simply because there might not be any other options. So it's a little bit of a higher standard for permanent displacement. And then in terms of the notices, which we'll get into later, there are some notices that are the same, regardless of if it's temporary or permanent displacement for residents, but others that change. The notice of relocation eligibility is basically letting folks know that they will be eligible to relocate unlike the notice of non-displacement where they're staying there. And then the 90-day notice to vacate is a longer lead up time to let people know how long they have to be out of the building than the temporary relocation's reasonable advance notice to vacate. And again, there are more slides on that coming later. So now I believe I'm turning it back over to Eric for assistance required. If I'm wrong about that, let me know. I'll just keep going.
Yeah, well, it's you, but I don't mind doing it. It's not a problem.
Okay.
All right. So relocation advisory services. Advisory services are really the most important part of just having a successful relocation program. The displacing agency must minimize adverse impacts to any persons that have been displaced by assisting in any way possible. And URA requires personal interviews with all displaced persons. So replacement housing payments. Eligible relocated tenants must be informed of all of their options regarding the payments. This includes receiving a lump sum amount for any down payments to purchase any replacement dwellings. So replacement housing payments. Displaced owner occupants can receive up to $31,000 to buy comparable, decent, safe, sanitary replacement dwellings. And the rental assistance payments for an eligible displaced person who rents any place or dwelling, the statutory limit is going to be $7,200 and often necessary to pay a little bit more. This is called housing of last resort, which Kyle kind of touched on for a second. Okay. Comparable replacement dwellings. So agencies have to offer any displaced residents comparable replacement dwellings before they can be required to move. Comparable replacement housing has to be decent, it has to be safe, and it has to be sanitary, and it generally needs to be a one-to-one replacement. Any more information that you need is in the Code of Federal Regulations, and that's going to be 49 CFR Part 24.2, and I'll let you read the slides when they come. So notices required. So a general information notice is one of the first notices that is required. And so what is a general information notice? It's also referred to as a GIN, and that is to be issued as soon as feasible to owners and tenants to basically provide any information on the proposed project and potential rights and protections. When is the best time to send this? Would be really as soon as you have applied would be like a great example of when. So as soon as possible, once you know that you are applying for funding, you should let your tenants know. Any questions, let us know. So we have just a couple of places that will tell you where you can find general information notices. So say for instance, HUD Handbook 1378, Appendix 2, if you have a residential tenant that's not being displaced. And then we have Appendix 3, if the residential tenant is being displaced, and that will all, again, be in the slides for you. So notice of non-displacement, also referred to as a NOND, is basically issued to any persons within a HUD-assisted acquisition, rehab, or demolition project who don't qualify as permanently displaced, so meaning that they are under 12 months. The NON should advise such persons of any agency's determination that they do not qualify as displaced and inform them on any rights to make an appeal. When is that? It should be at the initiation of negotiations. And that is basically, for instance, like at the execution of your home agreement or for CDBG. Right. So an example of a notice of non-displacement is here. And again, you can find that in the HUD Handbook 1378, and it will be Appendix 4. So we also have what's called the NO, which is the Notice of Eligibility for Relocation Assistance. So the NO informs occupants that they will be permanently displaced, their eligibility for relocation assistance, and an estimated time amount based on individual circumstances and their needs, and the procedures that they'll need to take for obtaining any help or assistance. And when should you send this to residents? It should basically be when the property is required or whichever is earlier. So really, as soon as possible, you would want to send this notice of eligibility out. All right. So 90-day notice. That's fine. No problem. So basically, 90-day notice is any permanently displaced households must be provided with minimum of 90 days written notice, no exceptions. Prior to being required to move, they need to basically receive this notice unless there are urgent provisions. And you can again read a little bit deeper at 49 CFR as to what those provisions would be. And when should you send this to residents? It would be best to give the notice, again, 90 days before you are asking them to move into any comparable replacement housing. You must also have made the comparable replacement unit available by this date. So the 90 days doesn't begin until there's another place for them to actually move to. So reasonable advance notice to vacate. What is it? It's a residential occupant will be temporarily relocated. The agency needs to provide reasonable written notice in advance. The date and approximate duration of the temporary relocation must not exceed a year. And minimum 30 days written notice is recommended. I recommend, as much advance notice as possible. And it should also include the address of the temporary relocation home that's decent, safe, and sanitary. Costs will be reimbursed and available advisory services.
All right, I'll close this out with the reminders and resources. So all things related to federal funding, record keeping is critical. We will be following up with you all on where folks are going if folks are displaced either permanently or just temporarily relocated. But even if that's not happening, if you're receiving HUD funds, you should still keep records on acquisition or occupancy of the project. It's a good idea to keep written project relocation plans. The tenant retention plan that you'll fill out for us is effectively like that, even though it's not technically required by URA. The city wants to see them to know what's happening throughout the project, and so we can follow up with you. And then, like I said, please stay in touch with the preservation team about where you are regarding the records on a regular basis, by which I mean, are folks relocating to where are they going? Have they received all their notices? When are they coming back? Have they come back when the project is completed? All of that. This is just a set of resources that you can find from HUD to explain more about the URA process if you have an occupied project where relocation will be happening. So there's online training called URA the HUD Way with a really helpful intro video that's animated called Introduction to the Uniform Act. The HUD handbook where you saw the examples that Eric was pointing out of the different forms that need to be sent around. And then if you have any questions, we can help point you to the right places. That might be assistance from someone at HUD directly who can answer questions as well. So that's it. We look forward to hearing from you if you have any projects that require occupied relocation. You can reach us by email at these addresses, and we'll be available a little later for questions.
All right, thanks, Kyle. Thanks, Eric. Next presenter we have is Deandra, who's going to be reviewing supportive housing, which is a separate category in the NOFA with separate funding. Deandra, I'll let you explain supportive housing to the group.
Thanks, Larry. You should all see my slides now. So as Larry mentioned, my name is Deandra Gorlay. I'm with our public-private partnerships team, and I'm the development specialist for permanent supportive housing. And so to define permanent supportive housing, really what it is combining deeply affordable housing with services to residents to help people who face the most complex challenges live with stability, autonomy, and dignity. And for this, we're defining dignity as meaning free from stigma and labels. So we wouldn't call residents who are living in a permanent supportive housing unit homeless or in the program or anything like that. They're lease and their autonomy within the development is the same as someone who has a non-permanent supportive housing unit. On the right side, you will see some of the tenants that sort of drive permanent supportive housing. You're required to have really strong partnerships that include city partnerships, service provider partnerships, partnerships with the COC. Permanent supportive housing works because of all the people that come along to make it work. It's tenant-centered, it's accessible, there's supportive services, it is centered in community, and it is sustainable. So supportive housing, as defined within this NOFA, and what the criteria is that the development would have MSHDA project-based vouchers, and at least 35% of the total units within the development have those vouchers. And this could include VASH or VA project-based vouchers as well. Rents, you're renting to households that are at or below 30% AMI in those units. You're providing on-site supportive services to residents that may include, and we encourage you to include, case management, behavioral health, physical health, and outpatient substance use. You'll take all your referrals from CAM, which I will define in a moment, and PSH tenants are not charged utility costs. So what permanent supportive housing is not is transitional housing, not shared housing, and it's not shelter or any other type of temporary living accommodation. If you're not sure if your project fits, I would take a peek at the NOFA for full details, or my contact info will be at the end and you can connect with me. So some of the key terms you should know when you're completing your application is the Detroit Continuum of Care, or what we call the COC. This is the local planning body comprised of local agencies and stakeholders that are working to end homelessness. The city is a part of the COC, but we are not the COC. CAM, or Coordinated Assessment Model, is the Coordinated Entry System, or CES, that refers people experiencing homelessness to emergency shelter and homeless services as resources become available. You may also hear them referred to as the HARA or CES. Locally, we call it CAM. Homeless Management Information System, or HMIS, and this is an information technology system used to collect client-level data on the provision of housing and services, and your development will be required to use this system. And then chronic homelessness. So chronic homelessness is an individual or a household with an individual that has a disability and is currently living in shelter or on the streets and has been homeless for a year or more. So who gets referred to permanent supportive housing in Detroit? PSH projects are required to take all referrals from the COC's prioritization list. So when you as a developer have a PSH unit that becomes available, you are reaching out and coordinating with CAM to receive a household for that unit. Our prioritization order is listed here, so we are still prioritizing chronic homelessness households. Should we have no chronic homelessness households on the wait list, then we would move to other households that are unsheltered, then folks fleeing domestic violence. Then we would look at households VI SPDAT or SPDAT score, families, and then singles, and then we would go to length of time of homelessness. So what I'll emphasize here is if you have permanent supportive housing units, you are not sourcing residents to fill those units. You are working with the Coordinated Entry System, or CAM, to receive a household for your unit. When you're completing the NOFA for us, you will look at Appendix H. On the left-hand side, you have the different criteria and the points that they are worth. So we're looking for your PSH project overview, your developer experience, service provider experience, property management experience, your CSH or Corporation for Supportive Housing Quality Checklist, your tenant selection plan, your MOU, your service, supportive service and staffing plan, and then your budget. And then on the right-hand side, please make sure you address each item in each question and section. And the attachment 4s that we're asking for are not the same as MSHDA's Addendum 3, so you can't simply upload Addendum 3 and mark it as checked for the city application. We are focusing on housing first, harm reduction, and tenant-focused service delivery. I know there's been a lot of conversation at the national level on housing first, and at this time, we are still focused on housing first practices and standards for our NOFA and for developments that we're working with for PSH. And then your responses should reflect collaboration from all project partners. So if you're the developer completing this portion of the application, you will likely have to work with your service provider for some of the answers to the questions, and your answers should reflect that coordination. For your budget, we're asking for a 15-year budget for supportive services. We are fully aware that you probably do not have every single source identified for the next 15 years, and that's okay. What we want you to start thinking about is what things will cost and what sort of sources of funding you will need in order to meet those costs. So things like your staffing. How many case managers will you have? Will you have peer support specialists? Will you have supervisors? What is that going to cost? What is that going to cost with benefits over those 15 years? Your startup costs. Will you need laptops, phones, office furniture, things like that? Your facility costs. What might be required there? Tenant transportation. So are you providing bus tickets? Will you have a vehicle? Things like that. And then any contractual costs. So are you then contractually working with like a legal services provider to provide services for tenants? Things like that. So you're going to create that budget for all those line items and start to identify your sources of funding. You will need to be creative with these sources of funding. That is how permanent supportive housing works. There is typically not one single source that is going to carry you through for the full 15 years. So we will be looking for that type of thoughtfulness in your budget as well. All right, the CSH Commitment to Quality Checklist within Neighborly, there is a downloadable file for you to use. With this checklist, you are just getting the 1 point for completing it. We realize that you will have no's on that answer. So there will be some things where you answer no to. No, I do not have this item. No, I do not know how I will obtain it at this time. That is completely fine. This is, again, an exercise to start you and your service provider team in thinking about what will be required, where will this information live, who's in charge of updating it. So please don't feel you have to answer yes to all of them. We're looking for real answers when you complete this. All right, your COC letter of support. So for the MISHDA Addendum 3, you are required to provide a letter of support from the Detroit Continuum of Care. You're also required to turn that letter into us, and that is due with your commitment level docs, Monday, April 6, 2026. So you will have to turn in a copy to us. All PSH projects have to have this letter of support. If you do not receive a letter of support from the Detroit COC for your project, then you would not be eligible for our funding. To receive the letter of support, you will have to attend a meeting with the COC PSH Letter of Support Committee. You'll provide to them a project description, your development team experience, tenant selection plan, how you'll decrease barriers, the target population you'll work with, your project budget, and then your commitment to participate in the Detroit COC. So we work closely with them, though we are not the COC, and we're aligned on the population being served, entering data into HMIS, and receiving all your referrals from CAM. So to learn more, you can visit the Detroit Continuum of Care's lead agency website. Locally, we call them HAND, or the Homeless Action Network of Detroit. You can visit the Continuum of Care's Coordinated Assessment Model website. There's also a link for the Detroit COC Letter of Support Policy, and then Corporation for Supportive Housing as well. Our local staff is Lindsay Bishop Gilmore, so you can reach out to her as well. And then this is my contact information here. I will be staying through the end of this section to answer any questions you might have about supportive housing as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Deandra. The next presenter this afternoon So we're right at the end, crossing over from morning to afternoon. We're still a little bit at the morning, but Sophia from our policy team is going to go over some new information that's in this NOFA, and it's the accessibility best practices. Just wanted to remind everyone that projects replying to the NOFA, if you're a new construction project and you receive funding from from this NOFA, if you're new construction, you have to have at least 10% of the units meet the accessibility requirements under the federal Section 504 requirements, and an additional 2% of the units, or at least one unit, whichever is greater, must be accessible for persons with hearing or visual disabilities. And if it's a rehabilitation project through this NOFA, then you would have to have 5% of the units meet the accessibility, with that same 2% or at least one unit, whichever is greater, being accessible for hearing or for persons with hearing or visual disabilities. And as a reminder, we do have an incentive in our NOFA that a project can receive 2 additional points in the scoring if you're a new construction project, and rather than committing to 10% of the units, that you commit to 15% of the units. And if you're a rehabilitation, if your project includes a rehabilitation of an existing building, that if you, instead of have 5%, if you go up to 10%, you can receive those extra 2 points. So just want to remind everyone of that before I turn it over to Sophia, and I'll turn it over to Sophia now. So Sophia.
Thanks, Larry. Appreciate it. Okay, I will be sharing my screen. Give me 1 second. Awesome. All right. Thank you everyone for attending today. I'm Sophia. I'm on the policy team at HRD. I'm just giving you a very quick rundown of some new requirements listed through the NOFA in regards to our goals around accessible housing and inclusive design. Just to kind of give you some context, 1 in 5 Detroiters live with a disability, and it's HRD's perspective that we need to make sure that housing development, housing preservation results in affordable housing, but also accessible housing, so it can accommodate residents of all abilities at any point in their lifetime. And we are, increasingly dedicating resources to this effort. And so you will see a few changes in our NOFA in relation to this goal this year. So I will show you this after I go through the slides. I'll show you some of these materials. So one thing that you will see is that we've created some accessible housing best practices information. We did a couple of focus groups with affordable housing providers and developers late last year with ULI Michigan and the Kelsey, and developers had said that they wanted more information on how to include inclusive design and more accessible housing in their projects. So there are a few things that you will need to acknowledge that you've reviewed essentially in your application. One is our in developing inclusive housing tip sheet. This is just a very short summary of advice on how to develop accessible housing and how to partner with the community in establishing design. We also included some materials in relation to property management. So, both development is important, but also who your property managers are and how they interact with residents with disabilities is a crucial component of accessible housing. And so we've included some best practices for how to lease and market accessible units, how to incorporate plain language, which is just common sense layman's term language essentially in your documents, and then how to structure accommodation and modification request, which, if you're receiving funding through this NOFA, residents are entitled for reasonable accommodations or modifications if they have a disability. And so this can all be found in Appendix N of the NOFA. We made sure it was embedded in there so you can easily find it. And then when you go into Neighborly, you'll be asked to confirm acknowledgement and that you've reviewed these materials. And, what we're hoping is that some of you can glean some critical insights from these materials and incorporate it into your development practices for your projects. The other new requirement we have in the NOFA is all those who get awarded will need to, submit a marketing plan just to show how are they ensuring that residents of all backgrounds know about these properties and know about leasing opportunities. And so we're asking you to provide explicit and in specific detail in your marketing plans of how you will distribute information about leasing opportunities for accessible units to Detroit-based service organizations, local disability networks, the local area agency on aging, disability service providers, advocacy orgs, etc. And then we also would like you to say how you will keep records of those outreach and marketing attempts. The goal really here is, accessible units are specifically designed and, then often are, require some additional expenses. And so we want to make sure that the residents who need these units are getting into them. And so we are just asking that, you kind of provide proof and a marketing plan of how you will specifically lease out these units and market them. And then in Neighborly, the online application for this NOFA, we are trying to collect better data on what accessible units are out there in the portfolio. And so the application will ask you to list your type A units, which are those fully accessible to those with mobility disabilities, your type B units, which are those that are adaptable for those with mobility disabilities, your hearing visual units, as Larry described. And then again, there will be that acknowledgement of the accessible housing best practices. So those are some of the changes in the NOFA this time around, this quarter, in regards to promoting accessible housing in the space. And we're really thankful to all of you for your partnership in this effort. I'm going to get out of these slides and just kind of show you a few other things. So this template, this is the kind of information I would provide in your marketing plan on how you would lease accessible units. So, the agency to which you plan to conduct outreach, that planned date of outreach, the mode of distribution, are you dropping off flyers? Are you having a focus group at an agency? And then who's responsible for outreach completion? So the staff member. I would make sure that, when you're doing marketing, materials need to be accessible themselves, right? Which means bigger fonts, right? For those with visual disabilities, not too many colors or contrast that makes it difficult to see things. You have to ensure that there's both digital and in-person ways for residents to contact your property. And I would also advise to determine the success of these marketing attempts and track how people find you. You can include a question on your leasing materials of how residents found out about your listing. For example, heard through the flyer posted at Detroit area agency on aging. So that is a quick rundown of the new requirements. Hope that these are just pretty easily explainable and can be embedded in your current processes. Our goal is really to make sure that everyone, regardless of ability and the point in their life, can benefit from affordable housing created through this NOFA. So thank you for your partnership on that. That's all I got.
All right, thanks, Sophia. And yeah, definitely in the NOFA, you'll see again in that appendix, and you'll see some of the flyers and some of the documents that have been prepared. So definitely check those out. I think there's some great information in those. So thanks, Sophia. So with that, we would be normally heading into our construction and rehabilitation requirements section. As I mentioned earlier, some of you may have joined late. Mike Neal, who leads our construction management and oversight team, unfortunately is out ill today. So we're not going to have that presentation. If you are interested in that material, you can go to the archives on our website and see last year or the last round's presentation. It wasn't last year, it was for the last round. And you can see Mike's presentation with those materials. So feel free to go there and check it out if you want to see that. The slides will still be part of the package that gets posted to the website. So we're going to move ahead then to the asset management and continued obligations component of the presentation, and Kyle's back for that piece. Kyle, I'll turn it over to you and the others that you may have joining you. So,
all right. Hi, everyone. Again, Kyle Ofori, Director of Preservation and Asset Management. This time, I'm mostly the slide master, so I'll just be moving these along while members of the asset management team tell you all about asset management, continuing obligations, and resources.
And I will take it away, Kyle. So first of all, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joshua Turner. I am one of the asset managements with the Housing and Revitalization Department. I do appreciate your patience and appreciate your time. We're just going to give a quick run through as far as asset management and what, our role here is with the city. Few things about asset management. First of all, again, we are with the Housing and Revitalization Department. With the asset management team, we monitor all housing and mixed-use project funds with proceeds from the following programs, which includes home, CDBG, which is Community Development Block Grants, Neighborhood Stabilization, we also refer to as NSP, and also the Section 108 loan guarantees. Also, another thing that we also monitor is our CHODO, which stands for the Community Housing Development Organizations. Basically, with these specific projects, we are, basically monitoring any type of existing city-funded projects to ensure, again, they are performing to our expectations, financially over a certain amount of time frame, some years, ensuring that they have a secure and financial future, and ensuring that number one, ultimately that the projects are remaining sustainable and they are also profitable and they are, providing, affordable housing to all of the city of Detroit residents. Next, I'm going to pass it to our other asset manager who's going to elaborate a little bit more.
Good afternoon. I'm Hilda Motley, and I'll go over the continuing obligations of the city-funded projects. All the housing projects funded by the city with proceeds from HUD programs must meet the following in order to be considered in good standing with HRD's management team. One is the annual income certifications, verifying that all home NSP CDBG units are leased to households that are low to moderate income as defined by HUD. And also all units must pass the physical inspections, including meeting all emergency health and safety standards. And also, they must meet the requirements that are included in some of the executed closing documents, such as the development and loan agreement, mortgage, assignment of leases and rents, payment notes, and affordable housing restrictions. The CHODOs must meet certain guidelines as well. The CHODO is a community development housing organization. It's a private nonprofit organization. It must continue to meet all CHODO requirements as described in the regulations. The same as with other individual city-funded project, CHODOs must demonstrate financial stability. The city must reserve not less than 15% of the home allocation for investment only in housing to be owned, developed, or sponsored by CHODOs. The city must also certify that the organization meets the definition of a CHODO. In addition, the city must document that the organization has the capacity to own, develop, or sponsor housing each time it commits funds to the organization. And I'll pass it over to LaDonna.
Hello, everyone. My name is LaDonna Isaiah, and I'm an asset manager for HRD. Now, I'm going to go over the resources that help us to help you and us be in compliance. So the first thing that we have is Mino Lending. They are the ones who will take your payments and give us different reports of you paying on time, and we will send you summaries and statements from them. And then for that home NSP and CDBG assisted units, we have Rebecca Steinyak. She helps us with gathering the documentation like your 2-year tax returns, rent rolls,
and items of that nature to make sure that we are able to do annual reviews and keep you going on the process of being a part of HRD. Now, if you have any questions about those things, you can definitely reach out to us. Here are our emails. We have Nora, who is our senior asset manager, Hilda, Josh, and me, who presented today, and we also have Mahira. She is out, but she's also a great asset to our team. And then our fearful great leader, Kyle. He is also on here for you if you have any questions. Thank you, guys.
All right, thanks everyone, and we'll be on for questions as well.
Thank you, everyone. So we're going to move on to the next presenter. I think I saw Lolita Fox has joined us to present about on the Detroit Home Connect website. So I think Lolita, I think you're presenting today.
Yes, I am. Good afternoon and welcome everyone. Do I need to pull up my PowerPoint, Larry?
Yes, please.
Maybe better if you do, so you can,
Okay, great. Give me one moment.
I think we saw the slide for a minute, Lolita, and then it left.
Okay, trying to pull it back up. Please bear with me. My apologies.
No worries.
Okay. Can everyone see the slides?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. So, again, my name is Lolita Fox, and I work on the team that manages the Detroit Home Connect website, which is an affordable housing website for Detroiters who are in search of affordable housing options. And the goal of Detroit Home Connect is to support residents, property managers, as well as developers. And we intend to do this by making the leasing process more equitable for residents, by increasing access to affordable housing options. We also hope to cut down on application processing time by pre-screening applicants and also reduce the initial lease-up cost for new developments. So residents are able to look for affordable housing opportunities by visiting Detroit Home Connect. They can search for multiple properties as well as view upcoming opportunities that are under construction and are in the development pipeline. Each profile provides unit and building information, as well as basic resident selection criteria, such as income and screening requirements. And the profiles also have each development's contact information. So that's information that's very helpful to residents who are searching for property information. So for new developments, prior to closing, we'll provide you with a new development form. And you'll be required to complete the development form and provide supporting documentation, such as rent rolls or a copy of the pro forma, as well as leasing staff, contact information, and any other pertinent information that we would use to create the profile. And then a member of our team will contact you to set up a meeting to review the information that you provided, as well as the draft profile. And then once we verify all the information, we'll publish your profile and it will be available invisible for the public to view on the Detroit Home Connect website. So once you provided the information and we create a profile and it's published, once your property has been placed in service, we ask that a member of your staff, it's usually your property management company or the leasing staff, that will maintain the profile and make sure that the information is current, and that occupancy information is updated on a regular basis. And then we also ask that a member of the property management staff or the development team contact us when you have availability. So if you have vacant units, we ask that you notify us so that we can share that information with our internal staff as well as housing support partners and residents. And we can also partner with you to assist you in leasing units by making that information available to the public, because the city of Detroit has a pretty big reach. So we ask that you please just share that information with us so that we can assist you in those efforts. So if you have any leasing questions or just general updates or technical issues, we ask that you email us at detroithomeconnect@detroitmi.gov. And if you have any compliance related questions, you can contact me directly. My email is lolita.fox@detroitmi.gov, and my phone number is listed there. So that's all I have.
All right, thanks. Thanks,
Pass it
Lolita.
back over to you, Larry. You're
Yeah,
welcome.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Lolita. So just as a reminder, as part of our receipt of receiving funds from the city, the loan, the agreements, the documents will require that you participate and post your projects and unit availability information on the Detroit Home Connect website. So just make sure that that's done, and it's a free marketing, free advertising type service. So don't forget about it. But like I say, you're really required to do it. And that was like the two teams that we just heard from, the asset management team and the Detroit Home Connect team. Those are the teams that I mentioned earlier. Now we've sort of implemented this new process where when the project reaches 50% construction completion, the underwriter that's working on your project will schedule a meeting to start more like formally making those introductions to those teams, so we can make sure the developments are uploaded and set up in the proper systems, so that they're ready, because you really want to get your information on, especially like Detroit Home Connect website, have it out there early before you're trying to do your lease up, so that all the residents in the city are aware of the opportunity to apply to your project, or to apply to move into your project, I should say. Okay, with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Elena Peterson, who is our expert on the neighborly application process. She will go through it, and just as a reminder, all applications have to come through the neighborly application process. So Elena will let you share with you how to make sure you're set up properly, and go through any questions you may have. So Elena.
Thanks, Larry. Hi, everyone. I'm Elena Peterson. I can go ahead and share slides. That way I can advance if that works. Let me just get set up here. Okay. Okay, can you all see my slides? Larry, if you can just let me know.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, great. So hi, everyone. Elena Peterson. I'm a project manager with HRD. As Larry said, I'm going to be talking you through the Neighborly platform. Neighborly is where you will be submitting your application. I'm going to run through a couple of slides, and then I'll pull up the system itself just so you can all see it, be familiar with it. It's a pretty, I think, easy to use interface, but again, I'll walk through it and then happy to answer any questions you might have. So to start, this is the login page. When you click on the link that's provided up at the top, it's going to bring you here. If it's your first time using Neighborly, you're going to click sign up now. You're going to follow the prompts to receive a verification code. So you're going to put in an email address, click send verification code. It'll send it to your email address. You type that code in. It allows you to create a password. Then you come back to this page and you just log in using that same email address and the password that you created. One thing to note is if you applied to the NOFA the last round in July, or if you applied to some of HRD's other programs, the pilot program, the tax abatement program, those all use Neighborly, so you don't create a new account. If you have a Neighborly account, it's just one account, so you just log in using the email address. Forgotten your password, you can see there is a forgot your password link. You can just click that to reset your password. I will note that it often going through that cycle just once for some reason doesn't work. So you tend to have to do it twice, meaning you click forgot password, it sends you an email to reset it. You kind of get in this loop. You got to do it twice. So apologies for that, but the second time around, it should work. If for whatever reason you're trying to reset your password, you're running into an issue even after doing it twice, or you're running into any other technical issues, you can see in the lower right-hand corner, there is a technical support button. Just go ahead and click that and someone from Neighborly Support will respond to you and work through whatever technical issues you may be having. Once you log in, you're gonna come to the Detroit landing page. For this program in particular, you're gonna scroll down until you see the Affordable Housing NOFA program, and then over to the right, you just click the blue Start Application button. Once inside of your application or your case, we ask that you please take note of the 5-digit case ID that you'll see in the upper left-hand corner. That's important because each application has a unique ID. So if you're ever communicating with HRD staff, it's the easiest thing to reference for them to quickly navigate to your case. Other than that, when you're on this first screen, you're just going to click that click here to continue button, and then it's going to kick you over to the first page. You'll see that there's a number of application sections listed on your left-hand side. And so you're just going to work through each of the sections, filling out all of the questions. We do ask that you, as you're completing a section or otherwise known as a page, that you periodically are hitting the save button that is at the bottom of the page. The reason for that is that Neighborly is not an auto-save platform, which means if you were to have filled out a portion of the page, accidentally clicked out of it, or stepped away from your computer for an extended period of time and the system timed out, the system is not going to automatically save the information for you. So if you hadn't hit save, then whatever progress you made will have been lost. So again, because this is a lengthy application, you're likely going to be spending a number of, a good amount of time per page. We just ask that, every 10 minutes or so, just scroll to the bottom of the page you're working on, click save so that you can ensure you're saving your work as you go. When you've completed all questions for a particular section, that's when you're going to hit that blue complete and continue button. That is going to give you a green checkbox next to the name of that page, as you can see over on the left-hand side. So you're just going to work through all pages, filling them out, clicking complete and continue, and just working your way through the entire application. Once you have green check marks next to all of the application sections, you'll then be able to click on that submit page. Prior to that, so if you'd only completed, a portion of those pages, you won't actually be able to click on that submit page. So if you're trying to get to the submit page, it's not letting you click on it. The reason is that you must be missing a checkbox on one of those pages. So just click on that page, make sure you hit the complete and continue button at the bottom. That's what's going to give you that green check mark. Again, you need green check marks next to all pages in order to be able to click on that submit page. And when you do come to the submit page, there's a number of attestations for you to read and check off on. We have a final signature at the bottom, and then you'll hit the complete and submit page, or sorry, the complete and submit button at the bottom of the page. One thing to note is that prior to clicking that complete and submit button, even if you had marked individual pages as complete, if you realize you needed to go back and edit one of the questions, you have the ability to do that. You just go back to whatever page you need to edit. There will be a reopen button at the bottom of the page. You click that and it allows you to edit your responses. The one thing to call out, after you have submitted your application, you no longer have that ability to reopen a page. So make sure that when you are getting ready to submit your application, you've thoroughly gone back and reviewed all your responses. Make any edits you need to, because again, once you click complete and submit, you no longer have the ability to go back and edit any of your responses. Okay, the next thing to note is that, again, this is a pretty lengthy application, so chances are you won't finish it in one sitting. When you return to Neighborly, you will notice that after having started an application, there will now be a section at the top that says continue an existing application. So that's where you will find the application that you started, and you simply click that view application to continue where you left off. And some tips and tricks to end with. Again, please remember to click the save button frequently. Neighborly is not an autosave platform. Again, if you exit your browser or leave the page before saving your work, you'll lose your progress. Again, cannot edit your application after you submit it. So before submitting, please review your responses. You do have the ability to reopen a page. Again, you lose that once you submit your application. Applications must be submitted by February 24th at 11:59 p.m. And again, you'll have the recording of this meeting to go back and review any of what I've previously covered. And I'm also, at this point, going to actually hop into the system itself so that you all can see it as well. Okay. So again, the link that was at the top of that slide and is included in the NOFA, and again, we'll make sure it's a million other places, but it's going to bring you to this login page. You all are going to click sign up now, enter in an email address, get a verification code, go through all of that. Again, I have one, so I'm just going to go back to the login page. Okay, so as I mentioned, it's going to bring you to this Detroit Portal welcome page. You all, especially if this is your first time coming into Neighborly, and if you have not applied to any previous program, you will not see this section at the top. You will just see this start a new application section. And so again, you're going to come down, look for Affordable Housing NOFA, and then click the Start Application. You're going to name it whatever your project name is, and then click Start Application. Up here, this is the 5-digit case ID I referenced. So again, please just take note of that. And on this first page, you just click here to continue. This program overview page just has some important information pulled out of the NOFA, link to the full NOFA here, the timeline of all the dates, and then links to some of the meetings. At the end of the page, there are a couple of process related attestations that you will have to read and then check off on, related to how we want you to name the various files you're going to upload, notes about file size limitation, review meetings, etc. So read through these, check them off, and then you'll hit the complete and continue button. And you'll see again, that's going to give you that green check mark next to that section and advance you to the next section. You'll notice that, again, there's quite a number of fields per section. Again, I think it's a pretty easy to use interface. Some questions are open text field. Some are radios, yes, nos. Some are drop-down options. So again, pretty typical of other online application platforms. As I mentioned, at the bottom is the save button. So again, recommend you're clicking this periodically as you're completing the page. And then when you are complete with the page is when you would hit the complete and continue button. Now you'll notice if you click that button and you have not filled out the fields that are required, it's going to highlight those fields red. And so if you get this message, it just means that you must have missed a required field. You just need to go back and complete it in order for you to mark the page as complete and continue. So again, you're just going to work your way through. You'll notice that, as I mentioned right now, because I don't have check marks next to all of the sections, I actually can't even click on the submit page. So that page will light up blue, allowing for you to click on it once you have check marks next to all of your sections. So I'll just click through a couple of the pages just for you to see, again, what it looks like. But again, a lot of just information around your project. We've got some tables, some dynamic tables, which means you add rows as many as you need. If you need to delete, you just click the red X. Section C is relevant if your project is a permanent supportive housing project. So we have one initial question. If yes, you'll fill it out. If no, you get to advance to the next section. And again, you'll get some notices that says, you know, you're leaving the page, please make sure you hit save, otherwise your changes will be lost. Here's where we get into some of the uploads. So again, to upload, just click the upload field. You can upload whatever document. There is no restriction on the file type, but please just follow the instructions of the questions. I believe we do have some, for instance, the pro forma that specify what file type should be used, Excel doc, etc. And for each upload field, if you need to add another document for that particular upload, you do have that ability. So you'll see that add another file, you just upload again. And there's no limit, so you can just continue to add another one. If you realize you uploaded the wrong document, you just click on that red X. It asks you if you're sure you want to delete, and then it goes away. So again, pretty easy to use. I think the rest of the sections are pretty similar to, just wanted to make sure I showed you all of the different kind of format options of questions. But again, some open text, some radio buttons, some drop downs, and then a lot of uploads. Again, please just read whatever notation we have. Some fields are only required for certain projects, etc. And again, as a reminder, in order to be able to access the submit page, you need green check marks next to all of the sections. Real quick, just to show you, I mentioned prior to submitting, you have the option to go back and reopen a page. So this is what that button looks like. You just click that. It's going to remove the check mark and allow you to edit your response. And then once you've completed it, again, you're going to have to hit that complete and continue button again, because we need to get green check marks next to all of the sections. The last thing to note, I know this question has come up before, you can have multiple users accessing and filling out an application. So one person obviously is going to start it, and then that person would just come to view users, this icon right here. Click that, and then you can add a user. You're going to keep them as the participant. You're going to enter in their email address, their first name, last name, and then click add. Make sure you're using whatever email address that person is planning to use, because when they come to Neighborly for the first time and they log in, if they don't use that same email address that you use to add them to the case, they won't be able to see it. So again, just make sure you're using the correct email address when you're adding an additional user to an application, because it's going to be tied then to their login when they come into Neighborly. And again, when they come in, since you would have already started the application, they're going to see when they log in that continue an existing application section, and they'll be able to just click on view application and kind of continue where you all had left off. I think that covers everything for now. So I will kick it back to Larry. And again, I'll be around for any questions that come up.
Thank you, Elena. All right, so we've got our now afternoon session or block of time that we have dedicated for questions. They can be questions on anything that was presented today, although a couple of the people I believe had to drop to go to other meetings. Russell Baltimore who went over the preliminary plan review process, I don't believe is still with in the meeting. And I think Jacqueline or Jackie, who did the labor standards earlier this morning, but their email, like I know Jackie put her email address, and several other team members have put their email addresses in the chat. So you can always reach out to them with specific questions or general questions. You can always put your questions through to the HRD NOFA at detroitmi.gov email address, and we can route the questions to any of the team members to help support. I think Penny rejoined, so if you have more environmental type questions, Penny's here. But we will now go through and see if let us know if anybody has any follow-up questions before we break for and everybody gets to go to other meetings, maybe that they have with other people other than the city today. So I did see a question in the chat, I believe from Michael. Were you asking about Michael Wright from Communities First? Were you asking about, you said, is anybody available to answer BABA requirements? Mike's not here. Mike Neal, who's really our expert, or the one that really monitors all of that. But what's the question? We can try to see if we can answer it. Oh, is Michael still with us? I don't know. We can always follow up. I see Michael's still here, but he hasn't unmuted himself to ask a question. So we'll just go on. Does anybody else have any questions for the group? If you don't have any questions, you're free to leave the meeting. We'll have a record of who was here, and thank you for joining. Hopefully it was good information for everyone. But you're more than welcome to stay to hear questions too. So let's see, we've got a question. Somebody raised their hand from Motor City Property.
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, Larry, I was just wondering, any of the panelists can answer. Uh, does any of the requirements or responses in the application violate any of the actions that need to be taken to properly answer some of the questions or address some of the questions in the application violate the choice limiting actions?
No, but Penny, I don't know, Penny, if you want to respond. I mean, all of our questions are like there are certain things like having a phase one environmental done before you apply for the federal funds or having a phase one. Like there's certain things that are allowed. You just can't do like certain works, certain activities that Penny discussed. Like you can't close on a project once you've applied. If you own the project ahead of time, you could apply and already own the project. But you can't close on it once you've applied until you've cleared the environmental review process.
So I can do the pursuing a grant from Wayne County. I can accomplish the phase one, phase two prior to doing the application, which is due by the 24th, and also but be under contract but not close on obtaining the property.
Right, and that contract should have the HUD rewind language. If I see Penny's come off mute and she can give you official answers.
Answering it perfectly, Larry. So yeah, environmental studies are not subject to choice limiting actions, and that rewind language would be required in any option contract that you have for a purchase.
All right, thank you.
And that the rewind language is in the NOFA document. So you'll see that there's an environmental section. There's a few places that we put that rewind language, I think, to make sure it's readily available. So.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? Senator. Senator, did you have a question? Oh, I'm not hearing you. I've not seen that you're muted, but I'm not able to hear you. Gosh, can't hear you. I can see you're trying, but I can't hear, so your mic's not working. Did you want to can you type something in the chat possibly? We were able to hear you earlier, so not sure why I'm not hearing you now.
There, try now. All right, can you hear me now, Larry?
Yeah, there you are.
No?
Yes, we can hear you. Oh my goodness. You're coming in and out a little bit, but
don't worry about it.
Senator, we can hear you. Please move forward.
Yeah. Oh, we can hear you now if you want to ask your question. Now I guess.
Thanks you.
Okay. Well, just a thank you and have a great day. All right, appreciate it, Senator. All right. Again, anybody who doesn't have any questions or anything is free to leave. We will stay here for a few more minutes. A lot of members of the team do have meetings at 1 o'clock to get to, but we'll stay here for a few more minutes just in case you think of any other questions. So appreciate it. again, any questions or things you think of after the meeting ends, you can send any questions to the HRD NOFA at detroitmi.gov email address, and a member of the team will route it to any of the other team members or try to or get back with you, as quickly as possible.
Hi, Larry. Kirk with Motor City Property Buyers. I have another question, if it's okay.
Sure, sure.
Okay, the public-private partnership is available to hold hands and help to guide an emerging developer like myself through this process?
Absolutely. That's the exact role that they're phenomenal at, which is sort of guiding you through all the different processes, many of which that were outlined today, and sort of just help you get your project lined up, help you with evaluating financial models, funding sources that you may want to consider. There's other information that you'll need to know for your application, such as other investment. Like if you're applying to the State Housing Authority, you'll need to have like a support letter on other investments in the area, so that they can help gather all that information and support on that. So,
and it's best to reach them through the email, public-private partnership at detroitmi.gov.
Yep, and it had an S, so it had public-private partnerships. It had an S at the end at detroitmi.gov. Yep.
Thank you. Larry and everyone, does the city, and I'm just trying to use up this time, think of many questions I can. Does the city have a list of preferred contractors who are familiar with the NOFA process, familiar with the Davis-Bacon Section 3 workers that have worked with the city before?
If you talk with the public-private partnerships team, they may have some. We, as a general rule, we don't. They may have just a general list of contractors that have done work on other projects. We don't necessarily have a recommended referral list or anything like that we recommend. But I think if you reach out and they can share with you some of the other a broad list of other general contractors that are familiar with working on these sorts of projects. Yeah.
Sure. And then another question, the pilot application, the pilot program is a separate program for funding as well. And is it through the city or through other agents?
Yeah, what the pilot's program is, it's a payment in lieu of taxes. So instead of paying ad valorem property taxes or property taxes that are based on the value of the real estate, for qualifying projects that are either that are going to provide affordable housing, you can qualify to pay a tax amount. Your real estate tax amount converts to a payment that's based on what's generally referred to as net shelter rents. So it's the rent that you collect on the project minus the utilities that the project pays for, not that the tenants pay for. And then you apply a percentage to that. And that range, that pilot for affordable housing projects, depending if it's government assisted or like you would have to, you can look at the pilot program. Again, there's links in the NOFA to look at that. But depending on the project, you might pay 1% of that, whatever your rent less the utilities that you pay. It's collected rent. So it's rent minus vacancy, minus bad debts, minus utilities times that, 1% might be your pilot rate. Some projects might be 4%, some might be 0.5%, depending on the projects and whether or not you're maybe if you're converting a vacant building, the rates are like half of the amounts. It's all laid out in that link, so you wanna check that out too. The supportive housing units that we referred to, that Deandra presented on, where you're providing housing for households that are currently unhoused, or chronically homeless, referrals that you take through the COC. Those units, the taxes are actually just $1 per unit per year. So if you have a 30-unit property, it's $30. And again, that's to help support the deep affordability targeting for those supportive housing units, and also allow the project to, if you have cash flow, be able to reinvest that cash flow into the services component of the project. So
if the project is mixed use, residential and commercial, the application does look at the residential portion to make determinations on award, or does it fit the program?
For the housing, yes. I mean, we have mixed use projects are eligible to apply. Mixed income projects are eligible to apply to the NOFA. So we're going to look at the overall project that applies. Yes. And what the revenue, what the assumptions are, and things like that. So. All right, if we're not hearing any other questions at this time, like I say, I think we want to be able to get to another meeting, some other meetings that start at 1. So I really appreciate everyone for joining and the questions that you asked. So I think we're going to end the recording and end the meeting now. And good luck. And if you have any questions before you submit, again, submit the questions to that HRD NOFA at detroitmi.gov email address. So thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.